They went out late. We finished before that.
You may have to take over, Sean.
Okay,
Just warning you.
okay.
It's a long meeting, I may have to pee.
Okay. It just says the local should have 40,000.
You done, ma'am?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
See that?
oh, yeah, I'm not throwing that away. That's the best part.
I could do that.
Yeah.
You could do those. Jan forgot.
Karina back. Do we know? Karina back.
From,
She got a trip.
there she is.
She is.
Answers that question.
Sean just said, is Karina back?
Yeah, that's right.
Hi, Karina. I'm Bonnie Lowry. It's part of the interview.
Yes, isn't it? How are you?
I'm good.
I was just asking if you were back.
Is this gonna be the best?
And back to reality.
Where did you go?
Went to Mexico.
Oh, nice.
Good, nice.
Jarring change, isn't it?
So nice to be there. Not here,
Not here.
sadly. ConsentAgenda.
All the kids finished?
He said,
Kids. It was just nice. We haven't done that for 2 years because of COVID.
You want to get anything before we start?
What was that?
You want to get anything before we start? Okay.
My car.
I'll call the meeting to order. This is a time and the place for the Monday, June 21st regular board meeting for the Marshalltown School District. Welcome to all of you who are with us this evening, and welcome also to those who will be following us on delayed broadcast or live streaming. Allow me to introduce the individuals at the table with me. Starting on the right, we have Bonnie Lowry, Karina Hernandez, and Sean Heitman. From the left, we have Jen McGinnis, Sarah Faltis. And at the center table with me, on my right, is Paulette Newbold. And to my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the Superintendent of Schools, and I'm Bea Niblock. We have a sheet to sign up if you'd like to address the board during public comment. You'll be given 5 minutes to speak, but according to board policy, the board cannot reply to your comments at this time. But we thank you for your comments. Please read with me the mission of the Marshalltown Community School District. We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills,
and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences.
And stand as you're able and join me in the pledge. Not yet. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
Yes, we've got quite a few. I'll cover the personnel items for Dr. Ryan. We have in resignations, we have some coaching resignations. Gina Clough from head 8th grade girls volleyball and 7th grade girls track. Marcia Schultz, high school assistant volleyball coach. And we have one paraeducator resignation, Mary Grimes, she's a bilingual language assistant at Woodbury. And then for appointments that we're adding in the paraeducator arena, we've got Rebecca Elliott, special ed paraeducator at Lenahan. We've got Jordan Weber, who will be a special education paraeducator at Lenahan as well. And then for teachers, we've got Catherine Schaefer, who will be moving from Miller Middle School to Marshalltown High School as an at-risk science teacher. Shelby Witzke, special ed teacher at Franklin Elementary. And Brian Wagsall, social studies teacher at Marshalltown High School. And then we had one interagency agreement that's been added as part of the Iowa Homeland Security and FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance Program application. We need a resolution passed by the board to support what the board's earlier supported, which is that if awarded the grant, which is just under $3 million, that 75% of that would be paid by the federal government, 10% of that is paid by the state, and then 15% of it is a local match. So the local match of the $2.9 million project would be just over $440,000. And so if the board approves that as part of the consent agenda, then there's a document that we need to pass around for you to sign. We're targeting making hopefully full application by the end of June. We have till the end of July, but we're shooting for the end of June, so this is one of the final documents that we need completed.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Heitman, La, Hernandez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Sodders.
Good evening. So we have a couple of recognitions tonight. The first is for James Christensen. He's the MHS Bobcats tennis coach and director of the Bobcat Tennis Academy. He received lots and lots of praise from community members for a very successful Iowa District Adult League Championships event out at the new court complex. So I think James is here. You want to?
Good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about the tournament and the response that we received from it. We hosted just under about 200 spectators and players, mainly from the Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City areas, but from a few smaller communities as well. They really loved the facility, and they were, many of them hadn't been to Marshalltown in quite a long time, remarked about some of our nice restaurants as well to me. Many of them stayed overnight between the Saturday and Sunday, so it was a nice economic boost to the town. For the facilities themselves, we really got to test out the full capabilities. We had hosted quite a few dual meets, district meets, et cetera already. But having that many people there at that high level of tennis was a big test. We even got to test out some features that we luckily haven't been able to yet, such as the accessibility. We did have an injury on court, and I had to go grab a wheelchair and wheel the participant off, which would have been much tougher in the past. So being able to do that was nice. All the people there certainly appreciated the bathrooms as opposed to the Kaibos. That was a big feature. The thing I heard over and over, I was sitting next to the USTA director most of the time, and they kept asking her, Jan, why do we have to go to Waterloo in a couple weeks? We want to come back to Marshalltown.
Nice.
So it was really nice to be considered a great place to host, and they look forward to coming back again.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
You've got another tournament coming up.
Yes, we do have a couple more junior level tournaments coming up in late June, the 29th and 30th, and then another one in July on the 21st. We'll be hosting people we've had signups from out in Bettendorf, Mason City, Ottumwa. I'm trying to think of the furthest west we've gone, Fort Dodge, I know. So they're coming from all over the state. We're in a great location where people can travel here relatively easily, and we're looking forward to hosting them all as well.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
We're glad we could make that facility for you.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, you want to?
So at the last board meeting, you approved the hiring of a new director of instruction, Mrs. Shauna Smith, and so we were pleased to have Shauna with us today. As you'll recall, Shauna was an employee of ours as both a teacher and a district-level teacher leader. She was in the position of elementary curriculum professional development specialist the first year that I came to the district, as well as Dr. Stevenson. And in the recent past, she served as both assistant principal and dean of students at Bondurant Farrar, and then for the past 3 years has been the director of curriculum for South Tama Schools. So we welcome Shauna to the district.
Thank you. Overly excited and honored to be here. Last time I was sitting in this chair, I was getting hammered with questions in my interview with all the principals and administrative team. I don't know if I'm more nervous now or, I'm kidding. I'm really honored to get to serve the community. We live in the community. My children go to school here, very much committed and invested in Marshalltown Community School District. I keep joking with Lisa that she's on speed dial, and she keeps telling me, make sure to call, and I know that I will take her up on that when I feel that I need her. Also feel very fortunate to get to work alongside Dr. Schutte in the number of years of experience he has as a superintendent. And then lastly, to get to work with all of you. I'm really excited to develop a relationship with all of you and to continue serving our students the best of our ability. So thank you for this opportunity.
Welcome to Marshall.
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Yes, I feel like I'm finally home, so yeah, I'm very excited.
We're
Thank you.
glad to have you.
Yeah.
And allow me to say goodbye to Lisa. I hope your years here have been enjoyable years, and you've learned a lot.
You didn't tell me you were going to do that. Thank you.
Yes. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of June 7th? You have a number of personnel item additions to the agenda. Do you have comments that you're going to make? Or?
No.
Looking at interagency agreements, we have an agreement with Interstate Power and Light Company to furnish work on gas and electric facilities. We have a STEM Best Program Participation Agreement. We have a partnership proposal with Junior Achievement. We have contract renewal for year 4 with Highland Dairy Foods and a contract with renewal with La Freda Fresh Produce. And we have an agreement with Osage for a level 1 student. In open enrollments, we have 2 individuals out for the 21-22 school year, and there is a denial for the 21-22 school year as well. Are there any items of note in bills?
No, ma'am.
In gifts, grants, and bequests, we have $1,000 in funds to support the STEM Best program. Any questions on the financial report? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry Faltus, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. Anybody on the pink sheet?
Nope.
So we calling here?
Yep.
See if he's on yet. He's not on yet, just one moment.
Jan, I can take it. Thank you. We use this stand.
Okay, we'll call him and then he'll jump on in short. Just so I can pass it down.
Good evening, this is Brad Black.
Hi, Brad. Theron. We're just,
Aaron, how are you?
good. Just trying to get you connected here.
I'll put you on speaker.
Amy's, bringing the Zoom up.
All right, looks like continue. Join.
Recording in progress.
Is that coming okay?
We're bringing it up on our end. I'll let you know here in a minute. Hopefully you had as nice a day in Lincoln as we did in Marshalltown today.
Yeah, it was a Chamber of Commerce Day. It was beautiful.
Okay, I think we're,
We're going to send it your way.
We have a Chamber of Commerce Day here ourselves.
Maybe we'll get two. Maybe we'll send you ours from today so you get it tomorrow.
Okay.
okay.
Now we
I
see.
know the weather goes west to east, so, you know, that's kind of our obligation to send you good weather.
Yeah, I think we're good to go now, Brett.
All right, perfect. All right, do you have the slides up, or do you want to share and have me pull them up?
I'll have to share because I don't have this.
Yeah, we'll need you to share, and then that way you can control them too.
Okay, perfect. Do you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, thank you again for everybody for making this work. I want to just jump ahead. Just a time check real quick. We're targeting 10 to 15 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Any questions you have, stop me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. So I'll just start with, first of all, thank you for doing this. Thank you for inviting us. And participation remained very high. I come from a Gallup world where we were happy if it was 50. And when you look at the overall district at 79 in some buildings in the 80s and 90s and 100s, that's terrific. So that's almost always going to be a great indication of interest in the process and an appreciation for the opportunity. So that's the first good news, is high participation. Questions? And again, we took a point-in-time reference. We didn't put time 1, time 2 on this slide, but we showed you the range and showed you the average broken down. So any questions on this slide before I go to our big picture? All right. Big picture, when we think about how we understand climate and culture, is to look at the dimensions. So from highs to lows, we have a point of reference last time. And we know last time, pre-COVID, was very different than COVID time. So it's a little bit of an apples and oranges context. But what I will say is, on the current mean, which is that right-hand column, engage and inspired of 4.22 is very high. Strength thresholds are 4 and above. So, you can look at those top 5 and say rounding off a 397 or 399 or 4. So to have 5 out of 15 in a COVID time that are at a strength level is very good. And when you look at the details of what's very good, engagement and inspiration, number 1, pride, number 2, continuous improvement, number 3, followed by innovation and quality. So you can see the rank order, and recognition is the world's number 15. Obviously, when you're not in person and you're referencing questions about recent recognition, that's hard to do. But we typically see the 365 way below that, so it might be your worst, but it's way better than the world's. So we know there's still recognition, being felt, just not under normal conditions. So on the high and the low, if you go from the highest of 422 to the lowest to the 365, it's an indication of a very strong culture. So I can go through and talk about, as I have in the past, each dimension and what it means. I'd be happy to do that. Or if you can just go through it and look at the top and bottom list. Any questions, anything you want to drill down on or want to understand more of what we're measuring? Be happy to take a few minutes to explain any more about any dimensions, if that would be helpful.
Could you remind me what mission conscious is?
It's a clarity and an awareness of what we're here for. So when you think about the mission of the district, the purpose of your organization, is people that are reminded we're here for the kids. To read the mission statement and not just kind of go through it, but do we live it? Are we reminded of it? Is it not just I'm kind of doing my thing, or do we talk about it? So again, a 372 is below obviously the 4.0. And we look at that as an opportunity, but it's usually in education one of the easiest to address because it's personally felt by almost everybody, or they can connect the dots by why we're, quote, in business, why we exist. We exist to impact students in the community. So, the 372, they probably feel like we survived a year. We didn't get to do all we could. Some people might feel like they couldn't do as well as they might under normal conditions. So handicapped by that. But a 372 under COVID conditions on a topic like that, I would not look at that in a critical eye at all. But I would say that it will be easy to rebound from something like that going into your next school year. Questions on any other dimension that we measure?
I think you've mentioned in the past, Brad, that traditionally recognition and communication tend to be two of the lowest ranked ones industry-wide, isn't it?
That's correct, both in education and broader industry. So the three that you see that are lowest are the three that are lowest in the world and three that are lowest in education. Communication's hard. There's a lot of levels and layers to communication, and your score is higher than we would typically see it in education or in business or in a community. Supported and equipped, we typically see it much lower. You know, you'd be 20% higher than a typical organization on supported and equipped, and your recognition would be 20 to 30% higher than we typically see it in an organization, even in education. And that's, I say that without the condition of COVID. I say that in a normal year. So given that, again, your worst, is much better, but it does indicate the relative difficulty on those topics. So communication, support, equipped, and recognition of the world's number 13, 14, and 15, and they're your number 13, 14, and 15. They're just heavier, harder to master. But again, good news on engaged inspiration, a 4.22 during COVID years, when people didn't see each other for how long under those conditions, very good. So let me jump to the next piece, just to be sensitive to time. And I can come back to this if you'd like. But the next piece is highlighting the best. So we have multiple questions in each dimension. There's actually 88 questions in the 15 dimensions. So some have 4 questions, some have 8 questions, but no dimension is one question. So for instance, you see in the highest of 88 questions, 3 of the top 5 out of the 88 are all under engage and inspire. So the number one highest rated question out of 88 is, I am fully engaged in the work that I do. Again, keep in mind COVID year, and it's virtually the same. The difference between a 4.53 and a 4.56 with 620 people is essentially saying it's the same level of engagement of your staff as before COVID. Wow, where in the world does that happen? Number 2 highest. I feel great pride in the work I do. The difference between a 4.52 and a 4.49, there really is no difference. So you see consistently in all of these top 5 items, let's go to the bottom. I'm driven to contribute to the success of my organization. Exactly the same COVID before compared to pre-COVID. And what stands out when I look at the top 5 is question number 1, the third one. In my role, I have the opportunity to do things that I both do well and enjoy. A 4.42 on a question like that is rarely seen in normal times. So it's hard to hit that one, hard to see it in the top 5, hard to see it at a 4.45 or 4.42. So number 1, indicates you're doing something because we rarely see that in the top 5. So again, the stability of your greatest areas, COVID versus pre-COVID, it says a lot. It says, you have a very resilient, strong staff, committed to your kids, and engaged in the work that they do. So a lot to be proud of. Questions on any one of these questions before I go to the other end of the spectrum and look at the worst, the bottom 5?
We're good.
All right. Go to the other end. So these are the lowest ones. Number 9, I have received meaningful recognition. Current, past 10 days, and maybe haven't even seen anybody. So for me, to expect that I'm going to receive it like when we were here during, normal times, that's not a surprise. That's consistently the world's lowest question. If we would survey Iowa or all of education or all of America, question 9 would be the lowest. Again, there is no question that, when you get into the fall and do your fall surveys, this is going to spring back up very close to, if not above, where it was before. Number 65, also one of the consistent low ones because it's hard. I feel on the things that are happening in our organization, and of course there's a drop because, things are changing every day. I'm not in the building with everybody. Communication is handicapped, during times like that. 28, provided opportunity to spend quality time. Nope, we didn't have opportunity to spend quality time. Question 40, in the past 3 months, supervisors discussed my successes and progress with me. Goes back to 28. Boy, if we haven't had quality time, I probably haven't had a chance to do that. Doesn't mean I couldn't. Doesn't mean, we shouldn't work harder at it. But obviously it's going to be handicapped by communication and distance and the challenges of a COVID year. And then question 61, organization has a genuine concern and interest about me as a person. 328 compared to a 339. That's the fifth lowest question on the overall survey. So, again, that's one where people think, well, how would we show concern? What would we do if you could answer a 5? So if we were in person doing feedback sessions, we'd be identifying what are the things we could work on. So you could say, well, the organization has a genuine concern and interest about me as a person. But obviously this was a time when people were thinking about their health. They're thinking about, what's normal, what's not normal, what's new, what's expected of me. A lot of change. So when you go to the lowest, and your lowest is not even a 2. When we go into typical organizations, you see the bottom 5, and the bottom 5 out of 88, you're going to see something that starts with a 2 during normal times, let alone COVID times. And then I'll just wrap up with one other thing. When we look at the overall snapshot, this is where on 2 of the 15 dimensions, we measure bottom line, how do people feel about giving their all and doing it here? So we reference a number of things. Number one, that dream box where it's 55.97, well, that's a drop from 68.90, but we know the world is between 32 and 35. So you're still not far from double good, if I can use that term, of the world. The other point to keep in mind is the 4 boxes, or the 3 boxes that surround the dream box, so the 4 in the upper right, are what we call the neighborhood. So you've got engagement. You've got solid to great engagement and solid satisfaction when you're in those 4. So when you add up those 4, you're at 90% of your workforce or the staff that's in those 4 quadrants compared to 93 during pre-COVID times. So there's between 90 and 93, COVID, non-COVID, should strike people as, wow. Of course, we had a drop in the ultimate, but overall, when we talk about how people are engaged in their role and want to give their all and want to do it here, 90 versus 93 is very good. And on the rim, which is the 5 boxes around, the left side and the bottom, typical world will have a third of their workforce in that category. You have less than 10. So again, context is important. So the 90 versus 93, and then the less than 10 compared to a third in a typical workforce. So you should be congratulated for the culture that's being built and, really tested, during the last 14 months. So questions when it comes to any part of the data, time 1, time 2, the trends, how we measure it. Again, I can go into some more detail with an added piece of the survey if we have time, or if Aaron, you'd want me to do that. But as a quick overview in 10 minutes, the news is you've got a solid, strong culture, and to expect it to be anywhere close to where it was pre-COVID, to me, you've probably exceeded expectations. And come fall, when people are back together, there's going to be a lot of energy through relationships and communication, recognition, to be able to go back with the trends that you had before. So let me turn it back to you guys for any questions, anything else I can help with, explain further, or highlight more.
I think I'll just add to begin with that I know that I had numerous conversations with Jared Northrup and a little bit with you, Brad, on my, I was struggling with whether we should even give the survey this year, knowing how challenging a year it was. I tend to be a little bit on the competitive side and want to see the arrows going up all the time. But at the end of the day, I'm really glad that we did this to see what kind of impact this past year had, knowing that it was going to be extraordinarily challenging for everybody, including the board, and was somewhat pleasantly surprised that things didn't drop any more than they did. As you mentioned, I think what I'm really going to be interested in is seeing how our scores next year look compared to even a year ago, to see if we can rebound strong and back on track with the trajectory that we had been on for the previous, I think it was at least 3 years. I think this is the 4th year we've done it now. So.
Yeah. Well, what we see and hear all over, as we always encourage people is, we know there's a competitive piece, in wanting to do better all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what's more important is that people know that it's genuine, that we want to know what you're thinking. And later, when this is done, and we've, again, heard the comments, around the country, it sure was neat that we had a chance to express our views even during difficult times, because it was one more way you showed you cared. It wasn't you cared under the perfect conditions or under similar conditions. You asked us the same immediate questions even during difficult times. And again, when you look at 79% participation, people have confidence and trust and appreciation in the process. So they'll remember that later. They'll remember that in the fall. They'll remember that a year from now, that this was not all about a score, it was about a genuine concern. So we hear that from people who are going into it and saying, of course I'd like to be asked again. No matter the time, I'd like to be able to answer these questions. I'd like to be able to know what we need to work on. They can go into the fall and know what they need to work on, and then be reminded that our greatest opportunities are at the building level, far greater than the district level, because that's where, it's the conditions created in that building, the tone or the standard set by that team and by that administrator that, hey, let's work on our building. If every building is working on their building, guess what happens in the district? It moves up. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for supporting it. Again, 90 compared to 93, less than 10%, in the rim where you don't want to be. I don't know, it's somewhere close to impressive. It's probably the best word I can come up with when I look at the data from 620 people.
I would ask that when you put next year's data on the chart, that you have the 3 years. Next year's, the COVID year, and the previous year.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that would help a lot. You could really see, a before and after in a similar condition. Yep. We can absolutely show you the trend information. Any other questions or any other comments, any other recommendations or requests for when we do this next time?
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. You have a great evening and enjoy your Nebraska weather that we sent your way.
Thank you.
Stacy.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to report on the district's student health services for the 2021 school year. To say that this past school year was unprecedented would be an understatement. From a health the health perspective, it was a year like no other. However, we have gained a lot of insight into living during a pandemic. Thank you. And as we've learned to navigate through it successfully by utilizing our mitigation strategies and collaboratively working together to help our students and our staff to stay safe while we're in school learning. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and start with my first slide here. All right. Our health office staff. So we did see a few changes this year. We added Brenda Villa. She is a new nurse that came to us to Anson. Starting a school nurse position during a pandemic is quite an interesting thing, but Brenda has done an awesome job, and we're excited to have her on our team. We had some new health aides this school year as well. Bill Roberts joined us as a health aide at Lenahan, and Rocio Villa-Gomez moved over to the high school to work with me as she had been at Lenahan. And we have two new health aides, one Katie Stoner at the Miller, and then we added a health aide, which we were very excited to be able to do at MLA. Jordan Weber joined us there. So we were very happy to have them join our staff. I would say that, this group of individuals, they have done an amazing job this school year with all of the changes and the evolving role. They've all taken on more leadership in their buildings, helping to navigate through this pandemic. I would tell you they're all very professional and very committed. They took a lot of calls on weekends and on evenings from families, from staff, helping to, with questions regarding, possible exposures and contact tracing. And so definitely this school year has been quite a challenge for our health office staff, and I'm just very proud of them all, and I feel very fortunate to work with them. All right, the next slide. So any of you that would be new to the board, I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look at any of the nursing services. Just the one thing that I wanted to highlight is obviously the monitoring for epidemics and pandemics, and that being always on our list of nursing services, and then to actually be living through it, that has been very interesting for all of us. The contact tracing, of course, we started with that last March, but this school year, as we've gotten back into the schools, that's been a huge endeavor for all of us. I can tell you honestly, though, that we've been very fortunate with our contact tracing. Families have been super helpful, calling when they do have a student that's positive or a close contact, and then we've helped to educate and walk them through that process. With our contact tracing, I can tell you as well, going through the return to learn and trying to make sure that our students and our staff are all safe at school, following through the mitigation, we have found clearly that, that we could get our students back into the schools and have them be educated in school and still be safe. And, from national data to our own data, it showed that truly being in school was the safest place to be during this pandemic. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. This is a lot of our standard services that we do continue to provide while still working through our pandemic strategies. I'm going to have you go to the next slide for me. And these are just some other school nurse roles that I just wanted to add on here as well. It varies per building. As you can see, school nurses are very involved with educating staff and with all the screenings that also are involved with that come through our health services offices too. So I won't go through all those. Awesome. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with some of our data here. All right, so we have an enrollment of 5,048 as of 6/8 of 2021, and we had 2,280 of our students that reported a health condition. So these health conditions are reported to us when students register for school, when parents, do the online registration, as well as if they bring in any documentation for us as well. So that shows we have about 45% of our students list some form of a health condition, which is a pretty significant number. Some of them even have multiple diagnoses. And again, these can range from something something as simple as vision impairment where they need glasses to, any of the various more chronic conditions. Okay. Our health conditions. We track these specific conditions because the National Association of School Nurses, they recommend that these are the main conditions that we should be tracking. The one that I really wanted to emphasize this year is our anxiety number. That is up to 265. So that is an increase. I believe we are increased by, let me tell you, 60% from last year. So we would venture to say that that could likely be because of the pandemic and the changes that our students have gone through. We know that the highest numbers were at the high school and the middle school, but most all of the buildings, all the way down to our elementary, did see, somewhat of an increase in this number as well. And I would tell you that this number is probably not even reflective exactly either. As I always say, we only know what we know. So some families don't even report a diagnosis to us. So we only know, obviously if they put it on their online registration or they notify us. So as we know, we've seen that trend with our social emotional issues that have definitely been in an increase through this pandemic time. But otherwise, the other conditions pretty much have stayed pretty much the same for us as far as number-wise. No other big changes. All right, outcome of health office visits. So our total visits, it looked like that all popped around there. They were actually down this year, 43,010, and they were down by about 9,000. And the reason that we believe this, obviously, there are a couple different reasons. First could be because of our hybrid model. And usually our highest numbers of health office visits occur in the high school and the middle school. And high school, obviously, we have more students than anyone else. And those are the two spots where we did go into hybrid. So we didn't have as many students there. So we're pretty sure that's obviously why that number did go down. And another reason being, we promoted don't send your student to school if they're sick. So we truly believe that, our families and our community listen to that as well. So not that we didn't have to send students home. However, I think the majority of people, if their kids truly had any of the symptoms that we advised on, they did keep them home. So those probably are the couple factors why we did see that decrease in our health office visits. And as I know we've talked about this before, our back to class and our sent home numbers do not come up to the same number as our total visits. So like, where did these students go? It does vary because of the fact sometimes they don't get there. In all of our health office visits, when we digitally go in, you can place them out somewhere, whether they're back to class, sent home, referral. So that's why that number doesn't always show up. As the majority of time, the nurses do put it in there. Sometimes if they have them in for a health assessment, they don't necessarily put back to class. So that's kind of why I think you see that, why our numbers are not consistent. It doesn't show where those other students went. It wasn't that they just went into oblivion. They just weren't documented probably exactly where they went to after their visit with us. All right, we'll go next to our next slide here. So our health and emergency plans per school year. I always just like to let you see where we're kind of at with those. Our 504 plans, as you can see, obviously the high school and MLA have the highest number there. And they are, and that our 504 plans, those are created, the nurse is part of that team, as well as the emergency health plans that the nurse does specifically work with the providers to create those as well. And those are for our students that have any life-threatening conditions, such as seizure disorders, diabetes, any of those things. We do create those emergency health plans, and you can kind of see where we're at number-wise on that too per building. And not many changes on that from the previous year as well. And then our immunization audit compliance, I always like to show that too. Our nurses work very hard to maintain compliance with our immunizations. And sometimes we have some issues with our meningitis vaccines with our 7th and 12th graders. That's primarily because this last year more than anything. Some of the families were a little nervous about getting students in to get vaccinated. But if, especially for my group, the 12th graders, they can get a provisional and they have 60 days to get that vaccine if they have already had one, which would have been that one that they got in 7th grade. So my compliance rate is usually a little bit better. Sometimes it's that 7th grade one that we have to work with. But families, they really do. Once we talk to them and encourage that, they get the vaccine, and actually public health works right hand in hand with us, and they will actually even go into the home sometimes or into the school to get that vaccine for our students. So I'm very proud of our immunization compliance. All right. This is just a list of state health requirements that the Iowa Department of Public Health requires for us, the dental screens. We work, of course, with MICA and the iSmile program. They come into our district to work with us. We were very fortunate that our partners could come in this school year as well. We weren't quite sure how that was going to look at the beginning of the school year when we returned, but we were able to get them in there safely and get our students screened. Our hearing screens, we work with AEA, and that's for our preschool through 2nd grade. The vision screens are done by students and by the nursing staff, and then also the 3rd grade, we do ask that families take them in for those vision screens, but they are compliant if the nurse does the screen, and then we just do referrals as needed. All right, and then Medicaid claiming, we had approximately 73 students that we billed Medicaid for this year. Again, this year was a challenge for us because we had several of our students that would have been some of our level 3s and that were virtual, and so that billing looked a little different, and so we did have some issues with that. Our numbers were down a little bit, and that gross reimbursement is still pending. Okay, I just was going to give you a little information here on some COVID numbers. So I wanted to let you know that we did track our positive cases, and of course we did our reports on a weekly. And I did want to tell you that starting last March, we did start to put in our health conditions students that were positive. So this would go all the way from the beginning of the pandemic, when it started in March of the previous year, to this June. We tracked it, and we had 178 students that were positive. Now, our numbers that, we would have reported on weekly, that does not come into this number. Well, it does come into this number, but that number is a lot larger that I just gave you, because that would have been when we would have been on the school closure too. But I just thought that was an interesting number, so I wanted to make sure I reported that to you guys as well. And of course, again, we only know what we know. I'm guessing that we probably had many more students that probably were positive. We just weren't aware of it, and we were not notified. So that again would have gone all the way back to last year when we did have the closure. And I'm very happy to say that we were able to get our vaccine clinics going here in the district. And so in February, we were able to vaccinate 81% of our staff. And I believe, just talking with other staff that maybe didn't get vaccinated, many of them I think have gone in as well, since then. So I feel really confident, and I'm really proud of our staff for seeing the importance in that and getting vaccinated. We partnered with Hy-Vee to do this, and they were excellent in working with our district in making that accessible. And then in May, when the Pfizer vaccine was approved for 16 and up, we partnered with Meskwaki Health Services, and they came into our district and did vaccines for that age group. And then it was just a few weeks later that it was approved down to the 12 and up. And so we worked with Meskwaki as well as Hy-Vee, and we offered 2 different clinics. And so looking at, we vaccinated approximately 560 of students 12 and up, and we have 2,670 75 students. So looking right there, it's about 21% of our students, 12 and up, have been vaccinated. And I think there are more than that. We just don't have that number. I don't know everyone else yet. So when we get in and we start to do our audits for next year, we are going to track that. So I should be able to give you guys that data next year too, as far as total numbers. I've been very happy. I can report that after visiting with public health officials as well as local providers, they have been very pleasantly surprised as they're getting students and families in for their annual physicals and their sports physicals. They're offering, of course, the COVID vaccine to all of them that come in, along with their other vaccines. And they said that they have been very pleased to find out how many of them, already said, I did get the COVID vaccine, at the school-based clinics. So I'm really pleased that we were able to offer that. Okay. In conclusion, I just want to say, this past school year has been one of constant change. The school nurse's role expanded, and we had to pivot to meet the needs of our students and community. Maintaining mitigation strategies, contact tracing, and educating on COVID-19 were very important parts of our roles in keeping our students safe. And I just want to thank Dr. Schutte for being a great leader for us and, supporting our health services departments through all of this and, through all the mitigation strategies. And I can honestly tell you, I know from talking to public health, local providers, we were leaders in the area in, maintaining those mitigation strategies, and our numbers clearly showed that. So thank you for helping lead us through that.
Thank you.
Does anybody have questions?
Will county public health be able to give us numbers of students age 12 and up that have been vaccinated, knowing many of them may have gone to like McFarland's clinic and
So,
other places?
yep, that's a great question. They actually just contacted me to find out how many that we had, at our clinic. So I was able to give them that. So IRIS, which is the immunization registry, that data is all in there. Every vaccine that's given is in there. The only thing is we can get a Marshall County number, but specifically to our district, that will be, I know in this time of data collection, it seems like we should be able to track that. But what happens is we don't know all of Marshall County students that go to, the Marshalltown Community School District. So it will be an individual audit. So, the auditing of 5,000 some students, we will be able to see that, though. We will track that as we do our audits this fall. Yep.
The hearing screenings that we do for pre-K through,
Yeah.
or preschool through second grade, do the private preschools participate in that or just the public?
Yep, private do as well. It's a state requirement, so. Yep.
Stacy, for the students that raised on anxiety, do we know if any are being treated for that, or is that just based on what they said?
Sure. So that number that I have, we certainly could track to see, how many of those are being treated. I would tell you that the majority of them are. And when we say treated, it could be, that they either on medication or, just have therapy. And I know for a fact that some of them are not being treated as well. So I don't have the exact number on that, how many are being treated, but that is a really good question. That's a good question.
Any other questions? Thanks, Stacy.
Great, thank you.
Stacy has the seat warm for you. And
She did. She did a wonderful job. She's
we're here
fantastic.
for a few items.
Just a few items, just a couple updates on some board-approved documents that we use at the high school. Which one are you starting with, Amy? You want to start with the course manual? Okay, if you can scroll down to page 10. Huge change here in how we do dual credit or senior year plus. So the legislation earlier in the spring added some language to senior year plus, which took out part-time student, so you can be a full-time student and a community college now. And then encourage the school districts to collaborate with their community college on alternate measures for students' access to senior year plus or dual credit courses. So the first thing that I did on page 10 was to make sure it was very clear that high school courses can be taken again, even if you've passed it. Obviously, they take them if they failed them, and if you've passed a course, but when you take it a second time, then, and you've already passed it the first time, your second time will be a P, and you'll earn elective credit. So some students, for example, like to take a math class over so that they can build their skills before they go on to the next class. And we've seen that primarily in 8th grade students. On page 14, Amy, is the beginning of a lot of language here emphasizing that Marshalltown Community School District will only pay for the cost of a course once per student per course. We do not want students to think, so that's why I emphasize high school courses you can take over, but college classes, if you take them over, it's on your dime, second time around. And in some cases, if they fail the course, their parents may be interested in having them take it a second time around so that their MCC transcript, the new grade will replace the F on the MCC transcript. And I believe they can do that multiple times, but the district is only going to pay for that once. So that appears every time there's any talk of concurrent enrollment beginning here on page 14. And then on page 18 is where we amended. So a few years ago, the district had approved the use of the AccuPlacer as an alternative measure for students to demonstrate the proficiency if they were unable to do that on the Iowa assessments. So now we have multiple measures. So if you scroll down a little further, the language from the legislation is included on page 18, but on page 19, it starts talking about testing. So the first measure is always the Iowa assessment. We don't want students to cop out of the Iowa assessment. We're held accountable as a school district to participation in the Iowa assessments. So then, if they could also show their proficiency on the ACT or the SAT, again, there's the AccuPlacer in Part C, or other equivalent standardized test, like the FastBridge. The district used to use the MAP, but we're using FastBridge for A reading and A math. If students still are struggling showing their proficiency in English, math, and in science, then we can begin to look at an individual review of the student's transcript to see how they have shown their growth of proficiency in the courses at a higher academic level. And then, again, the coursework, where are they at now, C or better in those courses. And then, of course, if you scroll down a little further, Amy, on page 20, I believe, there are some and we do a lot of this in Bobcat Ready. What are some of the other non-academic measures that indicate a student is college ready, right? So some aptitudes that students may have. But these would be in conjunction with the previously mentioned academic criteria.
Questions for Jackie?
So this allows some of our students who have struggled with ISASP in the past to be able to take college credits. I recall distinctly one year a senior student who every year that he'd been in school had shown proficiency on all 3 tests, and then got to 11th grade and something happened in science and was immediately eliminated from the ability. This is before we had an alternative measure. So that's why we went with that AccuPlacer, and now the legislation has helped us out.
May I have a motion to approve the update to the 21-22 MHA course guide as presented?
So moved.
Second. McGinnis, Lowry, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries 6-0. Handbook.
In our student handbook, we have adjusted our school day as we made adjustments throughout second semester by putting back our intervention period so that we can get our Fs down, which we thankfully did. Second semester. We want our schedule to reflect one bell schedule. So those of you who have high school students, it was a challenge to know which day are we on ENR schedule today or special schedule today. And the teachers always help the students out. So on page, my bifocals to work here, page 8, Amy, is the bell schedule. It reflects a 5-minute pass. It does reflect a 45-minute lunch. We are not going to. It also reflects 3 lunches. With 1,500 students, that's a 500-student lunch at 3 lunches. So we are keeping the campus open for 11th and 12th grade students only who are in good standing. That is, they are on track to graduate, their attendance is 90% or better, and they are maintaining their payment plan for their school fees and fines. Hopefully this year we will not have to have any 2-hour early release with the addition of air conditioning to the high school, but the schedule is there just in case we have an event like that occur. And then in the event of inclement weather and we have to start late, on page 9 is a reflection of a 2-hour late start using a slightly smaller lunch, but all 3 lunches in there. And then on page 12, thank you, Amy, just some updates to central administration personnel as well as school board members. And I think one more. And then I did find one error on page 24 in terms of requirements for graduation. We no longer have any students who have to take American History 1 or who had American History 1 as an option in their course requirements. So I did just remove that.
Questions for Jackie?
My phone number is wrong in there.
Okay, I have my pen. And I don't think I have Bonnie's, maybe. Go ahead.
641.
Mm-hmm.
691.
Mm-hmm.
6112.
6112.
641-485-4568.
Thank you very much.
May I have a motion to approve the MHS student handbook for the 21-22 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry Faltis, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries 6-0. Mastery Connect.
Mastery Connect. A couple weeks ago on June 7th, I presented Mastery Connect, which was a digital platform that would allow us to track student proficiency in our priority standards by course, something I've heard of at the high school level. But with the addition of our multi-tiered system of supports, we can target those areas where students have gaps in learning. We know over the 3 semesters that did occur. And so we want to have that data right at the teacher's fingertips so that they can design those interventions for students in a very timely manner. I believe that cost was $91,641.80. And I was asking for that funding from ESSER 3, is that right? From ESSER funds.
May I have a motion to approve the Mastery Connect purchase using ESSER 2 funds?
So moved.
Second.
Heitman, Faltis, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
So this is the time of year that our board considers what should be our legislative priorities for the coming school year. So I provided you through the board docs as well as through an unfortunately late email that I sent you today that I thought I had sent on Friday, the priorities from this past year that ISB has established, the priorities that we as a board, superintendent team established this past year, and the plethora of possible resolutions that IASB has developed for board's consideration. So typically those are given to you at this time, for which we would come back in July and put forward a recommendation for approval for the coming year. My thoughts at this time would be a number of the things that we've had the last couple years have really gained traction with the state legislators, especially as it relates to equity and funding. They've made a number of positive changes, both with at-risk funding, which is of huge importance to us, as well as started to make changes, or they've been making changes incrementally over time, which hasn't helped us as much as others, but with transportation equity and per pupil equity as well. And what I really feel our focus should be on is pushing for them to continue to really push for providing adequate financial resources to schools, both with continuing to make changes to the foundation formula that would provide even greater equity in the coming year, but particularly with the state supplemental aid, which has continued to be at record lows for this past decade, really, because that, in addition to having a relatively stable and sometimes declining enrollment, really handcuffs us to be able to give the types of increases that I think we'd like to be able to give our employees over time. The mental health issue, as illustrated by the statistics that Stacy just presented, is still a huge priority as well, especially coming out of COVID. And so that, for sure, I think should be a priority. And the other one would be the equity piece. And I need to reach back to IASB to see what, if any, adjustments from their previous equity resolution that they may be looking at making, because I know as of Friday, when they sent out their weekly email, there was indication that they are looking at tweaking that. But I think equity, particularly as it relates to curriculum, needs to continue to be of importance, especially in our district where we have the diversity that we do. So what I could kind of see happening possibly is maybe compacting the two financial ones together, as we've done in the past with other, or actually we've done it with that particular, those two particular priorities, possibly depending on how the language is, consider putting equity on there. We're only allowed to submit 4, so usually there's 5 that we've felt pretty strongly about, so we've kind of tweaked it. And quite honestly, as happened this past year, IASB put forward 5 because I think there were 5 that were pretty strongly supported across the state. So again, we submit as a result of that July meeting what our priorities are, and ultimately those get factored in with the other 300 plus districts across the state, assuming they all submit for them to determine their platform, which is usually presented to the delegate assembly to approve at the November annual conference. But be happy to entertain any comments from any of you relative to the resolutions. I think the thing that is continuously challenging for us is that most other communities in Iowa and most legislators representing those communities, even in some cases our own in Marshall County, don't fully grasp the challenges inherent when you have such a diverse population, socioeconomically, racially, and otherwise. And so it's just really, really important, I think, that we continue to, hopefully post-COVID, we'll be able to get the legislators, as we have in the past, into our schools to actually see school in operation and continue to help them to understand how important this is for us. Because when most of the states still pales in comparison to the diversity that we have. You know, it's hard to get them to understand the importance that it holds for us. And, you know, I'm really thankful that, at least with our federal government, with the ESSER funds, that they put a high priority on title, being title-based. And so that did help our district this past year with those ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funds. And, you know, of course, there are a lot of districts that felt like they were shortchanged in that. But, you know, this is not an equal sum game where equality is the way it should operate. We really need equitable funding to help provide additional supports for our kids and our families that absolutely need it. So, but you're more than welcome to shoot me an email, give me a call if you have any different ideas where you think we may want to discuss and or head with those priorities. But that's kind of my line of thought at this point, based on our prior conversations and kind of where we're at currently.
Be sure and read through those by our next meeting, because we will vote on that at our July meeting.
Yeah, I've got a proposal before you, and typically this would be a propose and come back at the next meeting, but there's some financial incentive to make a decision one way or the other at this meeting. The Education Advisory Board, which is very similar in nature to Hanover Research, who you may have heard of, especially those of you that have been connected to education, are probably the two biggest research think tanks in the country around topics of importance and interest in education. I've been exposed to both of these companies, probably Hanover a little bit more than EAB, over the course of the 16 years I've been a superintendent, and have taken advantage of what I have been able to, especially over the course of this last year, because each of them made a lot of their research that was related to what we were dealing with in the past year available free of charge. But historically, I have felt that, you know, for a district of our size and smaller, that sometimes it's a tough sell, or sometimes cost prohibitive to look at partnering with one of these research entities. With the advent of the ESSER funds, and particularly with our need to continue to evaluate what it is that we're doing, what it is we intend to do in the coming year, and to really take a close look at what more could we do in order to accelerate learning particularly, I'm recommending to the board that we partner with them at a reduced cost. Typically, for a district of our size, it's about $25,000 a year, and as you can see in the 3-year proposal that they put forward, which would coincide with the period of time that we have ESSER funds available, it winds up being about $20,000 year one, and then jumps a little bit year two, and then jumps up to just under, I think, $25 year three. What this will provide us access to is their entire research bank of materials and resources and toolkits, first and foremost, but it also will provide us with unlimited consultative support in any direction that we wish to go in terms of working with them. It'll provide us with unlimited webinar access at no charge to their, and they do these regularly throughout the course of the year. And probably most importantly, they'll work with us in a workshop fashion, whether it be on-site or virtually, which first and foremost, I'd like that to happen with our administrative team, full administrative team of principals and district level administrators, as well as our teacher leaders for sure at the district level, if not also the instructional coaches, to really hammer home on the topic of learning acceleration over the course of this year. I'd say their top 3 items of interest across the country in the recent year have been just that: accelerated learning, mental health, and social emotional learning, which we're currently engaged pretty heavily with both CASEL through Matt's fellowship an AASA through the grant that we received there. So not that we couldn't have some additional support or find some additional support, but that doesn't need to be the focus of this work for sure initially, because we've got those other two mechanisms. And then equity and social justice is the other real focal point that they've had. And, you know, with the volatility of where some of that has gone over the course of the last year, both in Iowa and across the country, you know, we need, if we do so choose to work with them, which I believe we will at some point, to try to figure out what more we can do within the confines of our law in Iowa. I've already talked to them a little bit about, you know, them having to come up to speed with where we're at in Iowa and help us continue to move the work forward, which particularly Dr. Stevenson has led with our administrators and such. And so I really, really think that this could be beneficial at this point in time. I probably wouldn't be asking this if it weren't for the fact that we have the ESSER funds available over the course of the next 3 years. I think this is something that we really should look at taking advantage of.
Questions for Dr. Schutte?
Well, some of what I've been reading now is that there is some controversy about research-based interventions versus evidence-based interventions, and that there's a real need for our teachers to learn how to read the research articles for their own disciplines and evaluate the research to see how valid it is. So will this company work with us to help us?
Yeah, they will develop custom projects with the district. So if our focus is on the accelerated learning, not only will they help us craft a plan based on what we're doing, what we intend to do, and what they think based on the research we should be doing, but they'll also help us with tracking that information. That's how they build their own research bank.
Other questions? May I have a motion to approve the EAB District Leadership Forum proposal as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries 6-0.
So,
Your turn again.
yes. Mrs. Wyatt, as she always does, graciously helped us with the recruitment and solicitation from the entire high school student body of students that would have interest in serving as a student's school board rep. As you know, we've had some really high quality student school board reps in the past. Typically, we don't get an overflowing number of applicants, but we did get 4 applicants. All 4 are incoming seniors this year. And, you know, we typically try to have at least 3 because of the fact that through student activities that the kids are engaged in and other commitments, oftentimes there could be 1 or 2, or with COVID, we experienced all 3 at times gone. My recommendation would be to approve all 4 of these outstanding applicants, particularly based on the fact that they're all going to be seniors. In the past, we've had a time or 2 where we've only chosen 3, maybe a 4, but oftentimes it's based on they're all high quality, but if one's a junior, they got another year to serve in that capacity. More times than not, we've accepted, I think, most all the applicants, but I would recommend that all 4 of these applicants, Phoebe Hermanson, Taylor Jones, Haley Reed, who served this past year as a junior, and Aaron Seeberger, be approved for the coming year.
Questions for Dr. Schutte? May I have a motion to approve the MHS seniors for school board representatives for the 21-22 school year?
So moved.
McGinnis, Faltis, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. The motion carries 6-0. Guess who?
So Gabby has put together based on the first and third Mondays, with the exceptions of the months where we only have one board meeting, January and July, and then also, of course, having the Tuesday in September with Labor Day. The coming year's regular board meeting schedule.
Any questions for Dr. Schutte? May I have a motion to approve the 21-22 school board meeting schedule as presented?
Move for approval.
Second.
Hernandez, Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. What are you doing here?
Yes, Dr. Ryan unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight. She's a bit under the weather, so I'm going to do my best to capture what I think she would share with the employee handbook. Most of the changes are either changes to reflect our board policy, our current and/or past practice that maybe wasn't fully reflected, and some minor changes that were either in the law or that we didn't recognize with the law. So 3 areas particularly that were included and/or beefed up were the Iowa gift law, conflicts of interest, and misuse of public funds. We've got some updates with reporting absences because we're moving away from ASOP and moving to a new digital platform there. We've got some updated information on unpaid leaves of absences, which we do approve for extenuating circumstances. I think there is some cleanup language as well. This will come back at the July meeting for approval, and I believe Dr. Ryan is working with, in communicating with MEA as well as the other union reps in order to make sure they're good with the proposed changes to the handbook.
Questions? Comments?
What are we moving to then if we're not doing ASOP?
It's a similar but different platform. Is it Safe Schools or something like that?
It's through Power School,
Or Power School?
SSFE.
It stands for something.
Smart Find Express, I believe.
Yeah.
I would think it would be very important to have union input on this before it comes back to us. If that can't be done by July, I would suggest that you table this until you get that union.
Yeah, and that's it. Those communications have already started, according to Dr. Ryan. She's fully aware that we don't make changes without consultation with the respective employee groups.
That was one of the big concerns by employee groups and the unions when we made the move to handbook from the contract.
Correct.
So I think we need to be most transparent in what we're doing in that handbook. Any other concerns from the board? Okay, Paulette, you're off the hook for a while.
Great.
All right, so under the American Rescue Plan, there is a provision that we would like to offer to our employees that utilize dependent care, dependent care benefit through our Section 125 plan, and this does require an amendment to our plan. So what we're asking you for tonight is permission to amend that plan so that for the current calendar year of 2021, those that participate in our plan can have a higher amount that they can set aside for dependent care for the remainder of the year.
So we're talking
Any questions?
for this current year.
Yes, it's for the 2021 calendar year, and what it does, it allows those that are in our plan to go back and redo the amount that they want to defer for this year.
Can they carry that over then if they,
No, it will be,
they have to use it by
yep,
December?
yep. But it increases the limit from like 5,000 to 10,500. So it will help some families. We have had some people ask about this, so.
Other questions for Paulette? May I have a motion to approve the temporary increase under the American Rescue Plan Act for the dependent care flexible spending arrangement?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry, Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. Hello.
There, that's better. My first one would be the proposal for the auditorium wall repairs. Shortly after the Dray Show, I was able to reach out, and Garling was one of the only contractors, both here in town and neighboring towns, that gave us an actual proposal to do such work. Went ahead and tried to find other contractors, see if we could get a more competitive bid, and could not get one with such. EMC Insurance, the rep I've been dealing with the whole time, recommended that I sign them on to do such work with what they had. He would approve that. So I just wanted to bring it to you to show you what that was. That would come in the sum of $96,820. It would be funded with insurance funding that we had. What that is it's the repair on the south upper part of the building where some of the panels had started to get pulled loose. We've been lucky. Garling actually provided support early on, right after the storm happened, and made temporary repairs, which have held, but, you know, obviously, we'd like to get it back to the normal finished product.
Questions for Todd? May I have a motion to approve the proposal revised R1 for the wall panel repairs at the Performing Arts Center?
So moved.
McGinnis, Faltus, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0.
All righty, thank you. The next one I have is from Woodman Controls. Woodman, our energy management company that we use for all of our HVAC controls throughout the district. They were currently working on the new controls as part of the HVAC project at the high school. At that time, when we was going through the design, I asked them to give us the newest format so we could kind of get away from the Java format that I know has been a big pain for the IT department for years. During that time, we realized the rest of the building would be still on the original format. So I had them draw me this format here, which would bring the rest of the building all under the same graphics and programming for the total cost of $13,450, and I would use capital projects proceeds to fund that as well.
Questions for Todd? May I have a motion to approve the Woodman Controls proposal?
So moved.
Lowry, Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0.
I'll try to cover the next three, and Todd can fill in if I miss anything here. And it's probably helpful to hear about all three at the same time, and then if you want to act separately on them, that's fine. So we had a couple things here with the high school heating and ventilation AC project. Garling discovered that after the board had already approved the increase in change order for the purpose of meeting Davis-Bacon wages, there were a couple subcontractors that they hadn't factored in to that figure. And so there's another 6.03, there's another $34,906.13 in making sure that the work is being done at Davis-Bacon wages that we need the board to approve so that the project qualifies for ESSER funding. And then if I jump down to 6.05, as they were getting into the work of the high school pool and ceiling and lighting project, they found that they could not implement the duct work the way that it had been specified, so they had to redesign, FEH had to redesign, and that work is going to entail, because they have to run more ducts than they originally thought, it's going to entail a change order of $16,811.49, which can come out of the contingency for that project. And then lastly, 6.04, as a result of that redesign, there was actually a deduct of $1,982.85 for Davis-Bacon wages. So the labor is not going to be quite as intense with this new redesign, but the new redesign is going to cost more in terms of the equipment essentially involved. So we're recommending that all three of those things take place so that we will, as we've been intending, we'll be able to use ESSER funding to support the reimbursement of the project.
And so the change order process begins. Questions for Dr. Schutte? May I have a motion to approve the MHS air conditioning change order number 2?
So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Hernandez, all in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. May I have a motion to approve the MHS pool ceiling and lighting replacement change order number 2?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry, Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. May I have a motion to approve the pool ceiling and light replacement change order number 3?
So moved.
Second. Walters, Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. Holy cow, more change orders.
Yeah, so similar to the HVAC projects, when we started the process of the specifications and design, preliminary cost estimates, and then going out to bid on the Lenahan AV and Intercom project, we didn't know at the time that we would have the ESSER 3 funding available, although we had hoped to use ESSER 2. So we've got 2 change orders here. One is to, again, make sure that this project meets Davis-Bacon wages, which would be a change order in the amount of $41,006.36. The second is, as we were firming this up with audio enhancement and KCL, Amy and I had discussion with Sam Jones from Audio Enhancement, who had indicated to us that literally within this past week, they released a new updated camera that was a significant enhancement on the camera that we had already purchased essentially from them. They had not ordered the cameras or got those in, but she wanted us to be aware. So Amy and I both separately and together met with Sam. I wanted to rely on Amy quite a bit on this to know is the value. I mean, common sense would say that when you're buying technology, you want to buy the latest, because it changes so quickly. But I wanted to make sure through Amy that the value added by doing this for both the teachers as well as the students and or families that would be receiving the product, which is basically the ability for a classroom to be live streamed to the internet and or recorded for future or current use if students can't be in school, was worth it. And we both came to the conclusion that it was in our best interest to go with the most up-to-date, state-of-the-art cameras that they had to offer. I think the easiest way to kind of put it is the optical ability of the camera to really hone in on what we're looking at is like at 32 compared to the cameras we had before were like at 4, I think. So, so anyway, in order to make that change, that's an increase in cost of $21,505.89. It was about $400 per camera, I believe, for the 48 classrooms that we're installing these cameras in. And so our recommendation would be for the board to approve these 2 changes. We have received pre-approval from the Department of Education that we can use ESSER funds to reimburse and support this purchase.
Questions for Dr. Schutte? May I have a motion to approve the LIN, AV, and Intercom change orders number 1 and 2?
So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? What?
Was Miss Sarah seconded?
Sorry.
Well, it was a race to get the second. It was like 3 people. Yeah.
Okay, we'll
It was a
pick
tie.
Sarah up next. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries 6-0. Holy cow.
Policies.
Yeah, let's just jump right into policies.
Okay,
For that sigh, go.
For the first reading, we have 2 policies, 312.5 administrative personnel, professional development, which B presented at the last meeting, and 303.4E1 fringe benefits for administrators, which was updating based on our meeting confer decision of adding 5 additional days of family illness to come from sick leave bank. There have been no changes to these proposed amendments since the last meeting.
May I have a motion to amend 303.7 and 303.4E1 and waive the second reading?
Moved.
Altus, Lowry. Somebody at that end.
Exactly.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries 6-0. Now, Sarah, you get the floor all by yourself.
Okay, thank you. Policies 314.2 and 314.3 discuss administrative personnel contract terminations via resignation and via dismissal. We were recommending to delete these because we have policy that is pre-approved, 303.3.
Are you making such a motion?
Motion to delete both policies.
Second?
Faltus, Heitman. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. Those 2 policies are now deleted.
I'll cover the next 2 policies here. For 3.1, employee physical examinations, we had our attorney Drew Bracken review this policy, and he made some slight changes and amendments. The one big thing with this is we wanted to grant up to 60 days of employment for employees to get this annual, or this initial statement of health turned into the HR office versus expecting it upon the first day of employment, which is pretty typical for those districts that still require that of initial hires outside of transfer or bus drivers or transportation that need an annual physical. 404.1-R1 employee dress code. I can't believe Dr. Ryan is not able to attend for this first reading, but I am recommending that we adjust our dress code to allow for our employees on Fridays to wear jeans along with spirit attire. There has been nothing with more, I didn't want to say annoyance, more leverage since I've been at the district. And according to our employees, this will go a long ways to improve our morale and our culture. So we'll see if that holds true when we do the culture.
Do your survey, exactly.
Can we say jeans without holes?
I do think I saw it there.
Can you buy jeans without holes these days?
I'll patch them for you.
I don't wear jeans with holes, so they still sell.
What?
I said, I don't wear jeans with holes in it, so they still sell them.
They still sell them. I don't wear jeans either, so. No,
Other
I agree
comments?
that the jeans should be professional-looking jeans.
Yes.
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 This is a common sense ruling.
Agreed.
Okay, Amy?
605.6, internet appropriate and safe use. You want to just speak briefly to the adjustments proposed there?
Dave Stanfield and I have been working on ensuring that registration really encompasses some of the things that we've been implementing in the last year, such as kids pre-K through 4 getting assigned a Chromebook. They won't be sent home, but they're assigned a Chromebook. So we want to ensure that those students are really taught digital citizenship and how to take care of their own device, and then be able to be held accountable, because there are definite incidences where it's intentional damage and that sort of thing. So we just wanted this policy to reflect what our some of our new changes. And then we also wanted to bring it to more modern times where we're not having a piece of paper that we're trying to file away. Instead, we are having parents and families consent digitally to the responsible use policy rather than sign it on a piece of paper. So it says students will sign a responsible use procedures form. That would be the part that would be deleted. Instead, we worked with Drew to come up with terms that would show the active consent from those families for the responsible use.
Questions for Amy at this time?
Will this happen during registration? Is that what you said?
Yes, there's a little check mark that says you can click on the policy or the responsible use procedures document, and then the parents have to check that they agree to the terms and conditions.
As long as you're going digital on that, is it possible to have that set up so that if the parents wanted to read it to them, that can be done?
As far as the accessibility, we do have it in multiple languages. I'll have to get back to you on that. I will look into that. I know our Chromebooks do have that feature. I'm just not certain within Infinite Campus.
If they can do it.
I will get back to you on that.
Okay, Paulette?
703.1 budget planning is updating the agency to the Department of Management, which is who we have to certify our budget with. 704.1 local, state, federal miscellaneous revenue. This allows us to deposit proceeds from the sale of real property into any district fund, provided a public hearing is conducted prior to deposit. Currently, we must deposit money back into the fund from which it was paid. 704.6 online fundraising campaigns. This policy is strengthened to provide greater ownership and control over the use of online fundraising. And 707.2, treasurer's annual report is simply updating the terminology for a change in the name of a fund. So recommend bringing these all back for the first reading.
All of those last 7 will come back. Mr. Siders, anything of note in communications?
Just plugging away on the items, registration and communications audit that were discussed last week.
Thank you. No more policies for a month. And when do we start again? September, October, November? August.
Well, month is,
You get a month off.
I don't know when it starts back up, but I'll check.
Oh, we at least have next meeting off.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the policies that we have recently been approving beyond the initial ones are recommended by ASB, so we've been trying to spread those out. They were ones that we got back in March, I think.
Yay. Yay!
I'm sure we can make something up.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. Please don't. Our next board meeting is July 19th. There's information there about the upcoming school board election. And we'll be expecting nomination papers from Karina, Mike, and Bonnie. Karina, Mike, and Bonnie. Moving on to committee reports.
The LAO committee met, and honestly, I found it much more informative. It was set up in a way that was maybe a little friendlier. And many of our students are making progress, which is excellent. The 35 students that got the illiterate certification. One of the questions I had, and it'll take some time to figure this out. Generally, the students many of our students are speaking some English before they start. We're not getting as many of the beginners. And so they really should be proficient before they get to the middle school. So we do see less growth at the middle school, but it's not certain if that's because of the second language program or because we're getting students at that level that have other language issues that interfere with their learning that second language. So other issues other than just the second language learning. And that's something to be thinking about. But generally, it was interesting.
Karina, anything to add?
I couldn't attend, sorry.
Okay.
But thank you, Jan.
Dr. Schutte, the Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations, affectionately known as ACER.
Yeah, so we had great attendance this morning at our quarterly ACER meeting. A lot of what we heard from the county and the city and the community college and the school district had to do with either infrastructure, construction projects that are happening, everything from the renovations at Marshalltown Community College to the ongoing renovation at the courthouse, which has been the gift that keeps on giving. And the city talked a lot about the infrastructure work that they've completed and are working on in order to provide greater access to housing, new housing developments, as well as improvements to the downtown area that are in conjunction with their downtown strategic plan renewal. Jared Heil talked a little bit about a tax sale which was going on today relative to delinquent tax receipts. So that's something that the school district as well as the college and the city all benefit from, the sale of those properties. Iowa State University Extension talked about the summer school STEM program that's continued to be offered this year in conjunction with summer school. Andrew Potter from the Chamber was filling in since we're in an interim period now with the search for a new Chamber exec, for which they've done phone interviews, like preliminary interviews prior to the in-person interviews, but he said that has been moving along quickly, and once they've determined on and received an acceptance from a finalist, then they'll be moving pretty quickly on replacing the Economic Development Director position and further contemplating where the Chamber will reside. You know, they continue to be at Trinity Lutheran Church right across the street from us. Shelley Lovell from the Waterworks mentioned Todd about she's continuing to monitor regulations, laws, and recommendations related to lead in water. And so I had talked to her about making sure she keeps you as well as I informed on anything we need to be looking at. And I know she's interested in partnering in whatever comes of that. Anything else of note that I missed?
I think one of the most interesting things, interesting may not be the right word, but for lack of a better one at this time, came from the city. They are repairing State Street from 3rd Avenue to 3rd Street and replacing all the sewers and water lines and et cetera. And the price tag for that is $1 million per block. Your tax dollars are worth.
Yeah, they had indicated that all of that infrastructure downtown is aged and in desperate need of replacement. So, and I think the other thing that Jessica Kinzer had mentioned is that the city's share of federal ESSER dollars or ARA dollars was seemingly much less than like what the county received or what the school district received. So she had indicated that they had about $3 to $4 million worth of federal funds, and they have about $10 million of work they need to do, I think.
Yes, what taxes are going to do. Okay, let's do 8:06 as well before we go into closed session, so that we have everything kind of finished up before we go into closed session. What have we done this evening to make education better for the Marshalltown students? Besides spend a lot of money.
We did spend a lot of money. Because the EAB, I think that can be a really positive thing, especially coming out of COVID with all of the learning recovery that we know needs to be done. You know, if that can pay off like you're hoping it will, Dr. Schutte, then I think that'll be a great thing for our kids. And I think the change orders, in particular the one at Lenahan with the better cameras, I think that'll be a big thing too. I guess I'll just keep talking. I thought it was really good to hear Stacy's report. It's always good to hear Stacy's report, but I think in particular the COVID stuff, I think her report was confirmation, Dr. Schutte, that the steps that you had us take, that we took to help mitigate spread, protect kids, protect staff, were the right steps and have paid off. I think also hearing the number of our staff that took advantage of the vaccine clinics that the district offered, and the number of our kids that have already gotten a vaccine, not just here. My daughter, for instance, didn't participate in the vaccine clinic here, but she's already gotten her vaccine. So I think that's going to be big this summer and heading into next year. So I think Stacy's report was was timely, and I really enjoyed hearing it, so.
And it really, it took a team, much more than just me, to develop that return to learn plan, which we had 75 people, I think, participating in that in the summer. And, I think taking the approach of doing everything that we reasonably could and hoping that the federal government helped support the expenditures that were attached to that was, the right thing to do. You can always reduce, over time what you've done. But if we hadn't, got things ordered when we did, which was pretty early on, we would have been struggling with some of that.
Well, something I'd like to point out too on the HumanX, with the top-ranked order things, that I've just finally visited nearly all of the schools and talked to quite a few teachers, and their top 3 were, I'm fully engaged in the work that I do, I feel great pride in the work that I do, and in my role, I have the opportunity to do things that I both do well and enjoy. And I really saw that as I visited with our teachers. They're excited about what they're doing. It was fun to watch what they were doing in the classroom, fun to watch their interactions with students and see the things that are happening. They truly are engaged in what they're doing.
Also, I think our teachers and our students, they all want to feel competent, and they all want to be learners, and they want to feel successful in their learning. And so with the PLC work, I think that folks have been doing, and with the infrastructure that Jackie talked to us about tonight, with the use of that new technology of being able to look to see which students are proficient and which students still need some more support, I think if it's used correctly, that identification will be quick. And I think if they go the next step and look at the teaching strategies that teachers are using in those classrooms where kids are being successful, you're not only impacting student learning, you're impacting teacher learning. And we're really, it gives us the opportunity to grow our skills and be more competent, because that's what we want to be in the first place, is competent at what we do. And so I think that was a good purchase.
Thank you all. In honor of today being the first full day of summer, my quote comes from Jenny Han.
It was cold today, it was. I agree.
It was a Chamber of Commerce day. Jenny Han, an American author of young adult novels, made this quote. She says, "Everything good and everything magical happens between the months of June and August. May your summer be good and magical." Let's take a quick break to de-water and water before we go into closed session.
It'd be the potty break.
Are you coming back? I'm just asking. Okay.
Children. Are you going to send me an email then for Friday?
He did confirm, I just have to confirm the time for you. But yes, I will.
Just let me know, so I can arrange it around.
Yes, okay, I will as soon as possible.
Sure, there's pizza left. Does anybody want any more pizza?
I want pizza.
Cookies. Veggie. Oh, nice. You.